How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at my Friday the 13th movies. If you guys are watching this video on the day it comes out, it should actually be Friday the 13th today, so a fun way to celebrate, and to be honest, I'm surprised I haven't done this video sooner, but this is probably my favorite slasher series. The other big slashers, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all had really, really good first movies, but the quality of the sequels would go up and down. Friday the 13th was the most consistent, and other than one movie, I think they're all really, really good. We'll get into which one that is later on that I kind of have problems with, but still think is fine. But this franchise is so incredibly consistent, and most of the entries are really, really good, and as a franchise, this one I think plays out the best. It's just so cool and iconic, and I'm really glad to do this video. I have primarily DVDs, as you can see here. I do have two of them on Blu-ray. This is primarily a DVD collection, and I got a lot of stuff to get to. This is a pretty big franchise, so let's go ahead and dive right in. We're going to have to go pretty quickly. I'm going to show you guys all the physical media, and I'm going to do a little mini review for each movie. I'll try to avoid spoilers as much as I can, but due to the nature of sequels, when I talk about a sequel, it might give away a little bit of the last movie's plot, but I'll try my best to make that as little as, you can. But anyway, open up with this Friday the 13th 8-movie collection. This is the Paramount movies. This is the first 8. It's the main run. It's not every single Friday the 13th movie, but it is the main run of them. This one I got from Walmart. I had some of the Friday the 13th movies before this. I was working on collecting them, but then this one was at Walmart, and it was so cheap that it was cheaper to re-buy some of the movies by getting this pack than collecting the rest of them individually. So really, really appreciate this. Great value there, and you can see on the back it has the plot summary, special features, and credits for every movie. A nice little information there, see the director and the year and stuff, and it's got this big device in the center that holds all these flaps, and I do really prefer flaps to stacks. You can just flip to whatever movie you want. Then they're all very uniform, so part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and part 8. Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about each movie. I'm going to have to go through this pretty quick because there are a ton of films here. But the first one, Friday the 13th, they wanted to make another holiday slasher after the success of Halloween, and Friday the 13th was a very good pick, something people knew, something that was already kind of creepy like Halloween was, but also not something that everybody else is going to pick. There are a few, like, say, birthday slasher movies. There are a few of those, but Friday the 13th, very, very unique. And this movie, this is before slashers 100% figured out what they were, so there's a lot of, true crime elements to it. It feels really dark and really creepy. The first one is significantly creepier than the others, even if it's not as slashery, but you get Friday the 13th. Camp Crystal Lake is being reopened years later after a couple murders, but when it's reopened, people warn that the place has a death curse, and a killer does show back up, and it starts to pick off the victims, and the camp is old, and they're fixing it up, but so it's kind of run down, and it's rainy, and it has a great sense of atmosphere. I really do love part 1, and it is kind of different than the rest. For the people who haven't seen the Friday the 13th series and kind of know, okay, this is what it's like, part 1, especially, the ending, is not going to be exactly what you think it's going to be, but it's still really good, but the series doesn't really get to be what it's known for till part 3. Flipping on, part 2 is kind of the transitional movie between Part 1 and what the series would be known as. This is the first movie where Jason is the killer, and he doesn't quite have his iconic look yet. He, instead of the hockey mask and machete, he has a sack for a mask, and his most prominent weapon is actually a pitchfork in this movie. But it hadn't quite got into the gory, over-the-top slasher that Friday the 13th is known for, but you can see it figuring out its feet in this movie, and also borrows pretty heavily from Bay of Blood. But very good slasher. I still like the first one better, but this one you can see it finding its feet and figuring out what the rest of the series is going to be. Part 3 is in 3D. This is where he finally gets his hockey mask, finally gets the machete. It is over the top and cheesy, especially because it's a 3D movie and they're really playing into that. But sort of going, really cheesy into Part 3, kind of, you get to Part 4 and you tone that down a little bit, but you still have kind of the energy that Friday the 13th Part 3 brought to the series, even if the rest of the movies weren't as over the top and crazy. This movie really did spark a lot of the manic, gory slasher energy for the rest of the series, and hey, it's a fun, cheesy 3D movie. Up next, probably this and Part 1 are the best ones in the series. Friday the 13th, the final chapter. They thought they were going to end it, so they went all in on this one. And you get a bunch of people, including the first appearance of Tommy Jarvis, which would turn into Jason's long-term enemy. But yeah, you get Tommy Jarvis, and you get them really going all in for the final one. They thought this was going to be the last movie, and it's the climactic battle, and I really do like it. But of course, it would not be the last movie, and in turn, if that's the final chapter, well, Friday the 13th Part 5 is the new beginning, and now they switched to Roman numerals, and they were all regular numbers before, now we're in Roman numerals, but Friday the 13th Part 5, you once again follow Tommy Jarvis, and Jason is back, or at least it seems, and you have to figure out who the new killer is, and this is one of those movies that, the setup is pretty good. It's not my favorite Friday the 13th, but then when they get to who exactly the killer is, you're like, I'd rather it have been this other guy, but I don't want to spoil it. But it's a solid, even though it's a different thing, it's still very much like the rest of the movies in the series, and it didn't stumble going into something new. But that being said, there's someone who totally should have been the killer in this movie, and he's not, but overall, still a classic Friday the 13th film, still does pretty well. Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, kind of like Halloween Part 4 when Michael Myers wasn't in Part 3, and then they go, the return of Michael Myers. Jason wasn't in Part 5, so Part 6 has to be Jason Lives. It's telling everybody, yes, Jason is going to be the killer once again in this series because we know you like him, and we're going to put him back now. Friday the 13th Part 6 has a lot more comedy in it, and in turn, it's really fun, a lot of the crazy energy. And I think they even parody the James Bond opening at the beginning. And also, again, Tommy Jarvis for his third film there. So gives those three kind of a sense of cohesion. But yeah, Part 6 is pretty fun. Gotta love it. Part 7, The New Blood. This one changes things up a little bit because it's kind of unofficially Jason versus Carrie, which is kind of a weird concept, and even though that kind of comes out of nowhere, it actually does turn out to be a pretty fun thing. You get regular shenanigans at Camp Crystal Lake, but one girl has telekinetic powers and is going to turn into a pretty cool adversary for Jason. Like I said, the supernatural element, you always had Jason who would keep coming back to life, but it wasn't super supernatural. And throwing in a character like this, you think that it might not work, but it's actually pretty fun. I liked part 7. It was a neat way to shake things up without totally going away from the formula. It's like, hey, let's give Jason a crazy new adversary, a super counselor, if you will. And I thought the new blood was pretty fun. And then you get to Friday the 13th, part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. And the common criticism with this movie is, even though it's called Jason Takes Manhattan, they didn't have enough of a budget to shoot in Manhattan for too long. It's really just the final climax there is in Manhattan, and the rest of it takes place on a boat going to Manhattan. And it's sort of like, as they realized when they were filming that they didn't have enough budget, the boat scenes got longer and longer until it was hardly any of it was actually in New York. But still, Friday the 13th, on a boat, a lot of cool stuff there. It's just, when you're expecting Manhattan and you get a boat, a lot of people were disappointed, but it's still a pretty fun movie, and the boat is an interesting setting and a cool change of pace. It's just not as cool as if Jason was really destroying stuff in Manhattan for 90 minutes, but pretty fun, a change of pace. And when you do get to the Manhattan stuff, there's some cool even some funny elements in there. But hey, Friday the 13th on a boat is still pretty good, even if it's not in the city. But you do get the city just at the very end. So all that's the main run of the Paramount films. One more thing to show before we move on is I do have a separate Blu-ray copy of Friday the 13th Part 3, and I had to get this because there's another kind of secret movie, Lost Tales from Camp Blood. And the deal with Lost Tales from Camp Blood is every single one of these movies has one little piece of it, and it'd be like a 5 to 10 minute piece, and you'd have to change the disc each time and find that disc copy of Lost Tales from Camp Blood. But in a huge oversight, Friday the 13th Part 3 does not have Lost Tales of Camp Blood in its bonus features. Now, I think there is a Blu-ray version of this box set, and I think that one does have it, but the DVD copy doesn't, so I had to buy this just for Lost Tales from Camp Blood. And that's about what I guess is a copycat killer at Camp Crystal Lake. It's really a low-budget slasher and doesn't have much to do with anything, and it is super short, and you do have to keep changing the DVDs. But it's fine. It's just not the best thing ever. And it's I got this in a buy one get one free sale, so I didn't pay too terribly much for it. And I did want to see what that thing was all about, even if it's not much. Up next, moving on to what we call the Jason trilogy, where they don't have the Friday the 13th name. I think it was a legal reason, and instead you get Jason as the franchise name. Kind of like when Child's Play started going by Chucky. But this one is the worst in the series, and it's not terrible, but it's really got some faults with it. Go ahead and open it up, show you the disc, and show you the inside there. But you notice this thing, this little like Clive Barker meets alien creature. What's that about? Well, in this movie, it opens up with Jason dying. So Jason's dead right at the very beginning, but then a mortician is magically compelled to eat his heart, which causes the spirit of Jason to possess him, and Jason starts to regrow himself as this little worm thing that gets bigger and bigger each time it jumps into a person. And this movie just really feels out of place. Plus, it doesn't understand, it gives this big magical reason as to why Jason can't die. But if you watch the series, you know he's died at least twice before, and it doesn't really work, So the lore that it introduces contradicts what had been previously established, and plus, it goes more for a Clive Barker route, and I do like Clive Barker, but this does it wrong. with the whole gory jumping from person to person thing, and it just feels really out of place. The overall plot is fine, the humans are fine, the kills and the gore are fine. It's just it went to a weird area and it was not the best at it, and it contradicted several of the rules beforehand, because like I said, they say, oh, Jason can't be killed unless you do all these certain things, but Jason's died at least twice. I do want to say, get the unrated cut. There's a few things that get cut out in the R cut. In particular, there's a death in a tent where this girl gets like cut in half, and that's heavily censored in the R cut. But yeah, not terrible. I just didn't like the direction this goes in. But some cool classic Friday the 13th stuff, and it doesn't take place in hell either. So there's that. Up next, Jason X, the second of the Jason movies, and this one I really did like. Critics obviously hated it, but what happened was they were going to do Freddy vs. Jason. That one got delayed. They wanted to make another Friday the 13th movie, and they didn't want to get in the way of things that might happen with the Freddy vs. Jason movie, so they set this in the not too distant future of, I think it's 2010 when the beginning of this movie takes place. So they set it in the not too distant future. The FBI catches Jason and they freeze him. And when they freeze him, like this other girl accidentally gets frozen with him, an FBI agent, and they get forgotten about, left on Earth for 1,000 years or so, and people in the future are in the spaceship, and they find them when they're like looking for good stuff on Earth, and they unthaw both of them, not realizing, about Jason. So you get Jason being resurrected on the ship and killing people in space, and even though it's cheesy, it's super fun, and I really do love it. And you start off with Jason, and at the end you get Uber Jason with his cool space robotic form, and it teases a sequel at the end that never happened, but someone said that there are Jason X comics, and man, if I could find those, I would buy them up really quickly. It's super cheesy, and plus now they set it in a not too distant future, which is now in the past, so if they revisit the Friday the 13th series, they're going to have to address why Jason isn't in a cryopod right now. They'll probably either just set it in the Reboot universe or do a new series after part 4, like with Halloween, just doing a new one after part 1. But anyway, fun but cheesy. There's the back, and then here's the disc, same as the front there. Moving right along, the last film in the Jason trilogy is Freddy vs. Jason, which I have on this Nightmare on Elm Street pack, which has the second 4 Nightmare on Elm Street movies. The Nightmare on Elm Street movies, there's 2 of these, and you can, grab 1 through 4 and then 5 through 8 and get pretty much the whole series except for the remake relatively quickly and easily there. I probably should get a single disc copy of Freddy vs. Jason, kind of like a AVP, a little cheesy, but it is a match that we've wanted to see for a while, and it's great to finally get these 2 characters together and fighting each other. But yeah, not the best movie ever, a little cheesy, but overall still pretty fun, and I'm gonna be doing individual reviews of a lot of these movies. I'm gonna try to do individual reviews of everything, and I can't wait to get to this one. The only thing is, I wish it was supposed to get a sequel, Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash from the Evil Dead movies, and Jason Goes to Hell actually does a little bit to set this up, but that never came out, which is disappointing. I think it had a comic adaptation of the script that never came out, but that thing is really rare, and if I ever see it, I'll grab it. But I do want to read that. And also, the movie I really, really want is I want to see Freddy versus Jason versus Michael Myers versus Leatherface. That is the four-way brawl, the Expendables of horror that I really want to come out, but it hasn't happened yet. Moving right along, after all that, we would eventually get Friday the 13th, the reboot. I have here the killer cut. I don't actually have the theatrical cut. But a lot of critics trashed this when it came out, and it was kind of just, hey, it's popular to trash on the slasher movies, but this actually is a really good return to form, you know. Jason X is in space, not everybody liked that. Jason Goes to Hell was a weird body snatcher movie, but this movie, it's another Friday the 13th movie doing what it's supposed to do, getting back to the style, you know, and it was really fun, and, you know, even a good R-rated movie. Oh, maybe this one does have the regular cut as well, because I see the R rating at the bottom. I always watch the extended cuts in movies. But you do get Jared Padalecki from Supernatural, and Danielle Panabaker, who would go on to be a Killer Frost in The Flash. So this is, CW actors. But it was really fun, a good R, and a return to form for the series. I also have this movie on Blu-ray there. It's kind of funny, they have two different covers. Sometimes you see that where the DVD and the Blu-ray will have different pictures on the front. But I do want to say, one thing that really bugs me about the critics, you know, not just that they trash this movie for no real reason. The thing that bugs me is people refer to this as a remake. This is not a remake. If you've seen the first movie, you know the plot of the first movie. Jason isn't even the killer in the first movie. Jason's the killer here. It's not a remake. It's a reboot. This takes place in an alternate timeline where the events of the series happen in the 2000s rather than the 80s, but this is not a remake of the first movie. It's not a remake of any of the other movies. This movie, Jason actually starts off with his cloth mask, and by the end of the movie, he has his hockey mask, and he drops it in the place where it's found in part 3. So this isn't a remake. This is Friday the 13th 2.5, but in a rebooted timeline set in the present. So not a remake, part 2.5. So yeah, it does kind of bug me when people say that. Reboot. Anyway, other than that, we do have, and this is kind of a looser connection, but Friday the 13th, the series. Friday the 13th, the series, has very little to do with the movie. It's the same people, you know, it's licensed, it is canon, but it has nothing to do with anything. It's a bunch of siblings that have inherited an antique shop, and they find that all the items in it are haunted. So they have to go and look at their records, find where all these haunted items are, and pick them up and save people who are being, you know, threatened by them. Supposedly, this was supposed to get to 5 seasons, and rumor has it the end of the 5th season, the finale, Jason's hockey mask would have been the final item that they have to collect, which would have been interesting, but because they never got there, this series never really connects to the main Friday the 13th movies. But for what it is, it's good. It's just relatively unrelated. But anyway, we have 3 seasons of this show, and I saw releases where they're all bound up into one big case, but man, those big cases, especially, I think this is 20 discs between all 3 seasons. That would have been a nightmare to flip through. So I got these where each season is its own case, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 discs in season 1, season 2, front, back, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 disc in season 2, and the third, the final season, final chapter, front, there's the back with the two cousins. They're like estranged cousins, and they meet each other. Open it up. This one's a little shorter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 discs. So one disc shorter. But overall, a fun series. I haven't watched every single episode yet, but it is cool in anthology format. Find the cursed items. It's just not a slasher and has nothing to do with anything else, but fun for what it is. I'll probably get around to reviewing this in some capacity soon. Up next, the kind of bonus stuff, I have Friday the 13th, the Killer Extra disc. I found this in a dollar bin, and it, as you can see from the slim case, was meant to go with another multi-pack. There's so many multi-packs and little bundles that all have their exclusive extras disc, and I was really glad to pick this disc up without having to re-buy the first 8 movies again. But flip it to the back, and there's actually quite a bit in here. I think it's printed with more detail on the inside, and there's the disc. But this is Friday the 13th Chronicles 8-part featurette. So a featurette for every of the Paramount movies. Secrets Galore Behind the Gore, that's 3-part featurette. Crystal Lake Victims Tell All, so some interviews. Tales from the Cutting Room Floor about editing. Friday Artifacts and Collectibles. And Scary Trailers. So sometimes bonus discs are really small and don't have much on them. You know, I've seen like 30 minutes on a disc, you know, sometimes, but this has an 8-part featurette, a 3-part featurette, lots of stuff in there. Glad to pick it up for $1. I don't know how much is repeated on the Paramount set there, but glad to pick that up. I have a whole collection of bonus disc. And then lastly, the documentary, another little bonus thing for this video. His Name Was Jason, 30 Years of Friday the 13th. There is another one, Crystal Lake Memoirs, another famous documentary about Friday the 13th. I don't have that one. I was never able to find it for cheap. But here's His Name Was Jason, and it's a 2-disc set, a really good in-depth documentary with 4 hours of bonuses, and then you get, some photos below it. So really cool to learn more about the series. 2-disc set, 1 and 2 there. So overall, pretty cool documentary and a good little additional bonus item for this video. So overall, that's a pretty big collection, despite most of these movies being in this one multi-pack. You have the Paramount movies, one that I have a second release of, the Jason trilogy, the Reboot, the TV show, bonus disc, and documentary. So, yeah, a pretty big collection. There's 12 Friday the 13th films. The 13th one has kind of been in a legal dispute for quite a while, but I hope we eventually get it. Until then, we do have fan films, a lot of which are on YouTube, and I'd recommend checking them out. Never Hike Alone's a really famous one, but there are several Friday the 13th fan films, and I'd say to tide you over, watch some of those. Maybe I should cover them. Anyway, this is my complete collection. To everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You're really helping the channel out. I'll put a relevant playlist on the bottom if you want to see more. You can click there and see more. It should be my complete collections video. I've done Child's Play, I've done Cube, I've done Return of the Living Dead. I've done a lot of complete collection videos. Oh, Halloween was another one. So if you want to see more, I have more there. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.